Hello. Today I'll be giving the correlation of God who's against sin. I talked about this before, but I would like to say again how God is against sin and the correlation involved with that. So I'll start talking about that today. And so I can prove that God is against sin. I've talked about this before in other videos, how God is against sin, all the sin. So, especially in my other videos, or my previous video. And if one blatantly continues in sin, bad events not associated with their sins will increase. That's a definite correlation. The event is correlated to their sins. It is a bias. And I give an example of if one gets drunk, a sin, drives and gets into a car crash, bad event, and this is a bias. And so it has to not be associated with their sins. There's a correlation on this. And so I give a graph on the relationship between what is the relationship? Intensity of sins committed and the frequency and intensity of bad events increase. So 0 means nothing bad happens, or frequency and intensity of bad events are 0, and then 1 being that you died from the bad event, normalized. Yes, so you see it in the figure below, and slope value is arbitrary and yet to be determined. So to clarify, if one continues in sin, intensity of bad events will increase. What can be proven is there is a slope, but the slope value is unknown. And yeah, so there's a correlation. And I give an example of what's not correlated. It's actually just a bunch of dots on the graph, and they don't have a trend line. And yeah, so may result in intensity of bad events increasing is for each person to do this on their own. A certain percentage will lie, but the majority should conclude saying that there is a correlation. So I give an example of no correlation of frequency and intensity of bad events versus intensity of sins committed. So this is not correlated. And so if you do not continue in sin, intensity of bad events will go down. Though from experience, the worst intensity of bad events was about 0.1 out of 1.0. Intensity of bad events at 1 is you died, and 0 means nothing bad happens. The number 0.1 is arbitrary, but the focus is on intensity of bad events are low when no sins are committed. So that's true. So if you do this on your own, ideally you want 0, 0, but from my experience, that's not the case. So from my experience, it's 0.1 out of 1.0. That's really good. And from my experience, the quality of my work has gone up too. At my work, and just working with other people, and you really just have to document this every day when doing this. So. Yeah, so that's true for a month. Write every bad event that happens down in your journal for a month. Bad event can be the following, but not limited to getting into a car accident, when they hit a run, your computer with all your valuable files on it stop working, your wife leaves you, you lose your job, you're demoted at work, your rent goes up more than usual, all your work at your job goes down, you have plumbing problems at your house, internet stops working, someone threatens your life in person for no reason, you receive a disease, etc., etc. If you write those bad events down for a month while blatantly continuing in sin, you'll see the correlation. So each and every day. Obviously, don't do this if you believe that God is against sin, but some people will do this. So I have to be as detailed as possible about this documentation process. So you just write down every single day of the bad events that are happening compared to last month. If you do this for a month, frequencies and intensities of bad events will increase. And if you, for a second month, do not continue in sin and all the sin, bad events will reduce significantly in your life. Write every bad event that happens down in your journal for that second month. And you'll see the correlation between the first and the second month. You'll see that if you blatantly continue in sin, bad events will increase that is not associated with your sins. Therefore, there is a mechanism happening in the background where if one blatantly continues in sin, bad events not associated with that sin will increase in one's life. So you can say that mechanism is God who is against sin. So this is true. And do this as well. And bad events not associated with custody on one's own will increase. The same process. And yeah, it's the same process. First thing a month compared to, it's the same explanation. So this only proves that God is against sin. This does not prove his specific name. It is also important for people to do this and not rely on other people's testimony. Also, do not do anything illegal. So if you believe that God is against sin, then don't do this. And this is true. Since I've proven that God is against sin, all this evil that people have to deal with is sent by God himself. So you have to stop continuing in sin and all the sin. There are some people who have photographic memory. A large majority of those people will, with photographic memory, should see the correlation of God who is against sin. This is by comparing the first month of not continuing in sin and the second month of continuing in sin. Bad events not associated with his or her sins will increase when blatantly continuing in sin. You'll see the correlation, especially if they have the photographic memory. So, I talked about this before, about what real prophecy is. And God is not karma. It's described as a bad event that is sent back to the person. This is the same way that person tried to give a bad event to someone else. But it is actually God who is against sin and will send that bad event back to that person. So this is true. This has been observed before. So there's been documentations on this as well. But I've proven that God is against sin, all the sin, that there's a correlation as described above, and that we cannot continue in sin. So, where are the men and women of God? I have the facts to prove that God is against sin, all the sin. And so I've proven that God is against sin once more people understand the correlation and these facts. So you cannot continue in sin. You have to do everything right from wrong in everything that you do. If you do that, then God will bless you, and your country will be blessed if more people in that country stop continuing in sin. They will be blessed by God. They will be set high above all the nations on earth, blessed in the city and blessed in the country. You have to stop continuing in sin and all the sin. I've proven that God is against sin, against an atheist. And so I've already proven this, and I will continue to prove this, that God is against sin. You have to do everything right from wrong. Listen to your heart. Do everything right from wrong. And do not continue in sin. So I've proven that God is against sin. And other people will still argue with me about this, even though these are facts, which I don't fully understand why they're doing that. So I've proven that God is against sin. I'll come out with more videos, and I will continue to prove that God can respond back. Thank you.